Jack Morrison sat in the dark bunker, watching the blue glow of the communication screen. The air was thick and stale, smelling of metal and fear. Around him, dozens of people waited in silence. They all knew what was coming. The Galactic Council was about to announce their decision about Earth. For 3 months, the trial had dragged on. Earth's representatives had tried to explain humanity's actions. They spoke about self-defense and the need to protect their colonies. They talked about the attacks that had forced humans to build weapons, but the Council did not want to hear explanations. They had already made up their minds. The screen flickered, and the familiar face of High Judge Korath appeared. He was a tall alien with gray skin and 4 arms. His black eyes showed no emotion as he began to speak. "The Galactic Council has reached its verdict," Korath said in his cold voice. "The species known as humanity has been found guilty of excessive militarization and dangerous expansion into Council space." Jack's hands tightened into fists. He had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the gut. Behind him, someone whispered a curse. Another person started to cry quietly. "The punishment is as follows," Korath continued. "Earth will be completely isolated from galactic society. All trade agreements are canceled. All diplomatic relations are ended. The human colonies of New Boston, Liberty Point, and Haven Station will be destroyed as examples to other species." The screen went dark for a moment, then showed images of the 3 colonies. Jack had visited all of them. New Boston was home to 2 million people. Liberty Point housed the largest human research facility outside Earth. Haven Station was where his own daughter lived with her family. "Evacuation is not permitted," Korath's voice returned. "The colonies will be destroyed in 72 hours. This serves as a warning to all species who might consider following humanity's path." The transmission ended. The bunker fell silent except for the hum of the air recyclers. Jack stood slowly, his knees stiff from sitting too long. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. Once, he had been Admiral Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. Now he was just another refugee hiding underground. "Sir?" The voice belonged to Lisa Park, a young woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She had been one of Earth's top scientists until the Council branded her a war criminal. "What do we do now?" Jack looked around the bunker at the faces, staring at him. Some were old friends from his military days. Others were civilians who had lost everything when the Council's blockade began. All of them looked to him for answers he did not have. "We fight," he said simply. Ryan Torres laughed bitterly. He was a fighter pilot with dark skin and angry eyes. "Fight with what? They destroyed our fleet 6 months ago. We have maybe 30 ships left, and most of them are barely spaceworthy." "Then we build more ships," Jack replied. "We find the lies. We make the Council pay for what they're doing." "Kate." Sullivan stepped forward. She was a small woman with red hair and a sharp mind. Before the war, she had run Earth's intelligence services. "Jack, be realistic. The Council has 10,000 species under their control. They have millions of ships. We're talking about going to war with half the galaxy." "No," Jack said, his voice growing stronger. "We're talking about showing the galaxy that the Council isn't as powerful as they pretend to be. Do you think we're the first species they've done this to? Do you think all those other civilizations just disappeared by accident?" He walked to the center of the bunker, where a large table displayed a map of local space. Red dots showed Council patrol routes. Blue dots marked human settlements. Most of the blue dots had been crossed out with black lines. "Lisa, your research showed that 17 other species have been corrected by the Council in the past 300 years. Where are they now? Where are the Ultrani? The Vec Empire? The Crimson Worlds?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Gone, all of them. The Council claimed they were dangerous, then they vanished from all records." "Exactly. The Council doesn't just punish troublemakers, they eliminate them completely. They want to make sure no one else gets ideas about independence." Jack pointed to the map. "But here's what they don't understand about humans. We don't give up, we don't roll over and die quietly. When someone pushes us, we push back harder. Ryan shook his head. Jack, I want revenge as much as anyone. My wife was on Haven Station. But we can't fight the entire galaxy. We don't have to fight the entire galaxy, Jack said. We just have to fight the Council, and we don't have to do it alone. Kate raised an eyebrow. You think other species will help us? After what happened to Earth? I think other species are tired of living in fear, Jack replied. The Council rules through terror. They make examples of anyone who steps out of line. But what if we made an example of them instead? The room fell quiet as people considered his words. Jack could see the mix of hope and fear in their faces. They wanted to believe him, but the odds seemed impossible. I've been thinking about this since the trial started, Jack continued. The Council's power comes from their reputation. Everyone believes they're unstoppable. But what if they're not? What if they're just bullies who've never been challenged properly? He pulled up new data on the screen. Look at their military. Most of their ships are hundreds of years old. They haven't fought a real war in centuries. They're used to fighting primitive civilizations with stone tools and chemical rockets. They've never faced an enemy that could adapt and fight back. Lisa stepped closer to the map. The Corvan Mining Guild has been sending us secret messages. They're angry about the Council's new tax policies. The Deltari traders are upset about the shipping restrictions. There are cracks in the Council's control? Small cracks, Kate pointed out. And even if some species help us, we're still massively outnumbered. Jack smiled grimly. Kate, you taught me that intelligence wars aren't won by numbers. They're won by information and timing. We know things about the Council that they don't want anyone to know. Like what? Like the fact that they started this war. Our colonies weren't expanding into Council space. The Council was expanding into ours. They attacked our survey ships first. They destroyed our research stations. We only built weapons after they started killing our people. Ryan looked up from the table. Even if that's true, who's going to believe us? The Council controls all the major news networks. They control the official networks, Jack said. But there are underground channels, black market data streams, species that the Council has pushed around for centuries. If we can get the truth to them, we can start building a coalition. He turned to face the group. I'm not saying this will be easy. I'm not saying we'll all survive. But I am saying that we have a choice. We can hide in bunkers and wait for the Council to hunt us down one by one. Or we can make them regret the day they decided to make an example of humanity. The bunker fell. Silent again. Jack could hear the distant rumble of surface traffic and the whisper of air through the ventilation system. Outside, the Council's blockade ships patrolled Earth's orbit, making sure no one could escape. Finally, Lisa spoke. What's the plan? Jack looked at each of them in turn. These were good people who had lost everything because of the Council's cruelty. They deserved better than to die as forgotten victims. We're going to do what humans do best, he said. We're going to survive. And then we're going to make sure the Council learns why that's a very bad thing for them. The war was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the Council destroyed the human colonies. Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the stars through the viewport. The ship was called Defiant Dawn, built from pieces of destroyed Earth vessels, an alien technology they had stolen or traded for. It was not pretty, but it worked. The ship floated in empty space between star systems, hidden from Council patrols. This was their new home now. No planet was safe for humans anymore. They had to keep moving, always staying one step ahead of their enemies. Report, Jack said to Kate Sullivan, who was working at a console nearby. Kate looked up from her screen. Her red hair was longer now, and she looked tired. They all looked tired. We have confirmation from the Corvan mining station. They're willing to trade fuel for medical supplies. The Deltari merchant ship will meet us at the asteroid belt in 3 days, Jack nodded. The Corvans were a tough species that worked in dangerous mines throughout the galaxy. They had no love for the Council, who taxed them heavily and gave them little in return. The Deltari were traders who cared more about profit than politics. Both groups had become valuable allies. What about the Ghost Wing? Jack asked Ryan Torres. Looked up from the pilot's station. They hit another Council supply convoy yesterday, destroyed 2 transport ships and captured their cargo. No losses on our side. The Ghost Wing was Ryan's fighter squadron. They had started with just 6 ships, but now they had 24. Some were piloted by humans, others by aliens who had joined their cause. They struck fast and disappeared quickly, like ghosts in the darkness of space. The Council is getting angry, Kate said. They're sending more patrols to hunt us down. They're also putting pressure on neutral species to stop trading with us. Jack walked to the main display screen. It showed a map of their area of space. Red dots marked Council forces. Blue dots showed their own people. Green dots were allies or neutral parties. The red dots seemed to be everywhere. They can send all the patrols they want, Jack said. We know these systems better than they do. We've been mapping every asteroid, every gas cloud, every place. To hide, Lisa Park entered the bridge carrying a data tablet. She had been working non-stop for weeks, studying everything they could learn about the Council and their enemies. I have the analysis you asked for, she said. Jack took the tablet and read through the information. Lisa had been investigating the Council's history, looking for patterns in how they dealt with troublesome species. What she found was disturbing. According to the records, the Council has corrected 17 species in the past 3 centuries, Lisa explained. But the pattern is always the same. First, they find an excuse to call the species dangerous. Then they isolate them. Finally, they destroy them completely. So we're not the first, Ryan said grimly. No, the Ultrani were declared dangerous because they developed faster than light travel too quickly. The Vec Empire was corrected for having too many colonies. The Crimson Worlds were eliminated for building defensive weapons. Jack studied the data. What happened to the survivors? There weren't any. The Council made sure of that. They hunted down every ship, every outpost, every individual. Complete extinction. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew they were fighting for their lives, but seeing it laid out so clearly made it real. The Council was not just punishing humanity. They were planning to wipe them out entirely. There's more, Lisa continued. I found references to other species that the Council considers potentially dangerous. The Thraxians have been building new ships. The Nexari have been asking questions about Council military strength. The Qadir have been refusing to pay higher taxes. Kate leaned forward. You think the Council is planning to correct more species? I think they're getting nervous. Our resistance is lasting longer than they expected. Other species are watching to see what happens. If we keep fighting, others might get ideas. Jack smiled for the first time in weeks. Good, let them get nervous. Fear makes people make mistakes. The ship's communication system chimed. A message was coming in on one of their secret channels. Kate worked her console to decode it. It's from Commander Brooks on the refugee ship Hope's End, she said. They found something interesting in the wreckage of New Boston Colony. The Maine. Screen changed to show a bearded man in a torn uniform. Commander Brooks had been in charge of New Boston's defense when the Council attacked. He was one of the few survivors. Jack, we've been going through the ruins like you asked, Brooks said. We found the Council's bombardment records. They kept detailed logs of their attack patterns and weapon effects. But that's not the interesting part. Brooks paused, looking directly at the camera. The interesting part is that they were testing new weapons. The attack on New Boston wasn't just punishment. It was an experiment. They were seeing how effective their new plasma bombs would be against human settlements. The transmission continued, with technical details about the weapons and their effects. Jack listened with growing anger. The Council had not just destroyed the colonies. They had used human civilians as test subjects for their weapons. There's more, Brooks continued. We found communication logs from the Council fleet. They were in contact with research stations throughout the attack. They were taking measurements, recording everything. They treated our people like lab rats. When the transmission ended, the bridge was quiet except for the hum of the ships. systems. Jack could feel the anger building in his chest. The Council had not just killed millions of humans. They had done it as a science experiment. "Get me a secure channel to all our ships," Jack said quietly. Kate worked her console. "You're connected to the fleet." Jack picked up the communication device. Throughout their small fleet, people stopped what they were doing to listen. On mining ships and converted freighters, in hidden bases and mobile workshops, humans and their alien allies waited for his words. "People of the Resistance," Jack began, "we have learned something important today. The Council's attack on our colonies was not just about punishment, it was about testing new weapons. They used our families, our friends, our children as experimental subjects." He paused, letting the words sink in. "They thought we would be easy targets. They thought we would die quietly and give them useful data for their next experiment. They were wrong." And Jack's voice grew stronger. "We are not test subjects. We are not examples for other species to fear. We are human beings, and we will not go quietly into the dark. We will fight, we will survive, and we will make sure the Council pays for what they have done." The responses came back immediately. Voices from across the fleet, human and alien, all expressing the same determination. They would not surrender, they would not give up. "Lisa, I want you to document everything we've learned," Jack said. "The weapon tests, the pattern of species elimination, all of it. We're going to make sure the galaxy knows what the Council really is." "What about the other species the Council is watching?" Ryan asked. "The Thraxians and the others?" "We're going to contact them," Jack said. "We're going to show them what happened to us. And we're going to offer them a choice. They can wait for the Council to come for them one by one, or they can join us and fight back." Kate looked up from her console. "Jack, we're getting messages from Corvin mining stations throughout the sector. They want to meet with us. They say they have information about Council troop movements." Jack nodded. "Set up the meetings. And Kate, start reaching out to those other species Lisa mentioned. It's time to turn this from a human resistance into something bigger." The war was growing. Soon, the Council would learn that they had made a serious mistake. They had wanted to make an example of humanity. Instead, they had created something they had never faced before, a galaxy-wide rebellion. The data that changed everything came from an unexpected source. Kate Sullivan was working late in her small office aboard the Defiant Dawn when the emergency message arrived. The sender was Director Vex, a mid-level Zephyrian official who worked in the Council's intelligence division. Kate had been cultivating Vex for months, feeding him small pieces of information and building trust. The bird-like alien had grown tired of the Council's brutal methods. His own people had once been conquerors, but even they had never destroyed entire civilizations for sport. The message was short and urgent. "Meet me at the old trading post. In the Koros system. Come alone. I have something that will change your war." Kate found Jack in the ship's small dining area, eating a meal of recycled protein and synthetic vegetables. The food was terrible, but it kept them alive. Most of the crew had learned not to complain about it. "We need to talk," Kate said, sliding into the seat across from him. Jack looked up from his food. Kate's face was serious, which usually meant trouble. "What is it?" "Vex wants to meet. He says he has information that will change everything." Jack set down his fork. Director Vex had been providing them with Council patrol routes and supply schedules for months. The information had helped them avoid capture and plan their raids. But Vex had always been careful, never giving them anything too important. "Could be a trap," Jack said. "Could be," Kate agreed. "But he's risked his life for us before," and he sounded desperate. Jack thought about it. They were always taking risks. Every day they stayed alive was a victory against the Council. Take a small ship, bring backup, but keep them hidden. If it's a trap, get out fast. Kate nodded and left to prepare for the meeting. Jack finished his meal and went to the bridge. Lisa Park was there, studying data on the main screen. She had been working on a new project, analyzing Council communication patterns. "Any progress?" Jack asked. Lisa looked tired but excited. "I think I found something. The Council's communications aren't as secure as they think. There are patterns. In their encryption, that suggests they're hiding something big. What kind of something? I'm not sure yet. But there are references to something called Project Stillwater. It appears in dozens of classified messages, but always with the highest security codes. Jack made a mental note to ask Kate about it when she returned. Project Stillwater sounded like the kind of secret that could be useful. 2 days later, Kate came back from her meeting with Director Vex. She walked onto the bridge carrying a data storage device that looked like it contained enough information to fill a library. "Please tell me that's what I think it is," Jack said. Kate's face was pale but determined. "It's worse than we thought, Jack. Much worse." She connected the device to the main display system. The screen filled with council documents, communication logs, and classified reports. Kate had organized the information into categories, but there was so much of it that Jack didn't know where to start. "Vex gave me access to the council's internal network," Kate explained. "Everything you're seeing is from their own files. And Jack, they didn't just destroy our colonies as punishment. They've been doing this for centuries." The first document Kate showed him was a historical report on the Ultrani species. According to the Council's own records, the Ultrani had not been aggressive or dangerous. They had been peaceful explorers who had developed faster-than-light travel on their own. The Council had destroyed them because they were afraid the Ultrani would become too powerful. The Vec Empire was eliminated because they had too many colonies, Kate continued. The Crimson Worlds were destroyed because they asked too many questions about Council policies. None of them were actually dangerous. Jack studied the documents. The pattern was clear and horrifying. The Council had been systematically eliminating any species that showed signs of independence or strength. They had been doing it for 300 years. "It gets worse," Kate said, bringing up another set of files. Project Stillwater. The Project Stillwater documents were even more disturbing. The Council had not just been destroying civilizations. They had been creating the conflicts that justified their actions. They had been secretly supporting both sides in wars, making sure that violence continued so they could step in as peacekeepers. The Zarian War lasted 50 years, Kate explained. Both sides thought they were fighting for survival. But the Council was selling weapons to both the Zarians and their enemies. They wanted the war to continue so they could eventually take control of both species. Lisa Park joined them on the bridge and began reading through the documents. Her face grew paler with each page. The Plasma Rebellions, the Hive conflicts, the Tarlan Civil War, the Council started all of them. But why? Jack asked. Why create all this suffering? Kate brought up a new document. It was a strategic planning report from the Council's High Command. Control. They learned that scared, desperate species are easier to control than confident ones. So they make sure every species in the galaxy has something to fear. Jack felt sick. The Council had not just destroyed humanity's colonies. They had been manipulating the entire galaxy for centuries, creating wars and suffering to maintain their power. There's more, Kate said quietly. The genetic research programs. The new documents showed that the Council had been collecting genetic samples from every species they destroyed. They had been using the samples to create biological weapons designed to target specific species. They had samples from humans, Ultreni, Vec, and dozens of other extinct civilizations. They're planning to use these weapons on any species that rebels against them, Kate explained. Earth's isolation wasn't just punishment, it was preparation for biological warfare. Jack stared at the documents, trying to process the enormity of what they had discovered. The Council was not just an authoritarian government. They were monsters who had been committing genocide for centuries. We have to get this information to the rest of the galaxy, Jack said. Every species needs to know what the Council really is. That's the problem, Kate said. The Council controls all the major communication networks. Even if we could broadcast this information, they would claim it was fake propaganda. Lisa looked up from the documents she was reading. What if we didn't have to convince them? What if we could prove it? Jack turned to her. What do you mean? The Council's central archives are on Nexus Prime, their capital world. If we could access the main database, we could broadcast the truth directly from their own systems. No one could claim it was fake if it came from the Council's own computers. Kate shook her head. Nexus Prime is the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. It has orbital defense platforms, energy shields, and a fleet of 10,000 ships. We have maybe 200 vessels, and most of them are converted cargo ships. But we have something they don't expect, Jack said slowly. We have the truth. And we have allies who are tired of being afraid. Jack walked to the communications console and opened channels to their entire network. Across the galaxy, humans and aliens stopped what they were doing to listen. People of the Resistance, Jack began. We have learned the truth about the Galactic Council. They are not the peacekeepers they claim to be. They are criminals who have been murdering entire civilizations for 300 years. He paused, letting the words sink in. We have proof. We have their own documents, their own records, their own admissions of guilt. But proof is not enough. We need to show the galaxy what they really are. Jack's voice grew stronger. We are going to attack Nexus Prime. We are going to break into their central archives and broadcast the truth to every world in the galaxy. It will be dangerous. Many of us will not survive. But if we succeed, we will free every species from the Council's tyranny. The responses came back immediately. Not just from humans, but from Corvins, Deltari, Thraxians, and dozens of other species. They were all tired of living in fear. They were ready to fight. Lisa, I want you to study those defense plans, Jack said. Find us a way in. Kate, contact every ally we have. We're going to need everyone for this. Jack looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Nexus Prime waited. It was the most dangerous target in the galaxy. But it was also the key to everything. If they could expose the Council's crimes, they could start a revolution that would free the entire galaxy. The Council had made an example of Earth. Now it was time to make an example of them. The fleet that gathered at the edge of the Nexus system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from dozens of species hung in the darkness of space, waiting for the signal to attack. Human fighters flew alongside Corvin mining vessels. Deltari traders had converted their cargo ships into weapons platforms. Even the peaceful Qadir had sent their fastest scouts to help. Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, watching the massive fleet on his screens. 200 ships had grown into nearly 1,000 as word of their mission spread. Species that had been enemies for generations were now fighting side by side against the Council. Final systems check, Jack announced over the fleet communication. Channel, Ryan Torres reported from the Ghost Wing formation. All fighter squadrons ready. We'll keep their defense fighters busy while you make the surface run. Kate Sullivan was coordinating the electronic warfare teams. Jamming systems are online. We should be able to disrupt their communications for at least 20 minutes. Lisa Park was running last-minute checks on the infiltration equipment. The archive access codes Vex provided are still valid. If we can reach the central database, we can broadcast to the entire galaxy. Jack nodded to his crew. Remember, this isn't just about revenge. We're fighting for every species that the Council has oppressed. We're fighting for the future of the galaxy. The attack began at dawn, Nexus Prime Standard Time. The rebel fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a coordinated assault that caught the Council defenders completely off guard. For centuries, no one had dared attack the Council's capital world. The orbital defense platforms were designed to fight off small raids. Not a full-scale invasion, Ryan's fighters moved in first, their small, fast ships dodging between the massive defense stations. The Council's fighter pilots were skilled, but they had never faced enemies this desperate. Human pilots flew with suicidal courage, ramming their ships into defense platforms when their weapons ran out of ammunition. Defense grid is weakening, Kate reported. Sections 4 and 7 are offline. Jack watched the battle unfold on his screens. The rebel fleet was taking heavy losses, but they were winning. Council ships were exploding or retreating as the Ragtag Alliance pressed their attack. Transport teams, prepare for surface assault, Jack ordered. The infiltration force was small but skilled. Jack led the team himself, along with Lisa and a handful of human marines. They also had Corvan demolition experts and Deltari tech specialists. Each person knew they probably would not survive the mission. Their ship was a modified Deltari courier, fast and quiet. It slipped through the battle above Nexus Prime and dove toward the planet's surface. The capital city was a massive sprawl of gleaming towers and government buildings. At the center stood the Council Archives, a pyramid-shaped structure that contained the secrets of the galaxy. Council security forces are mobilizing, Kate reported from orbit. You have maybe 30 minutes before they surround the building. Jack's team landed in a public park near the archives. The city was in chaos as news of the orbital battle spread. Council officials were evacuating important buildings while security forces tried to maintain order. Move fast, stay quiet, Jack told his team as they approached the archives. The building's outer defenses were designed to keep out protesters and spies, not military assault teams. The Corvan explosives experts made short work of the security doors. The Deltari tech specialists disabled the alarm systems. Within minutes, they were inside the most secure building on the most secure planet in the galaxy. The Council archives were vast, with endless corridors of data storage and computer terminals. Lisa led the way, using the building plans that Vex had provided. They needed to reach the central database core, deep in the heart of the building. Security forces incoming, one of the Marines reported. Multiple squads, heavily armed. Jack deployed his team in defensive positions. The human Marines and Corvan fighters took cover behind computer consoles and data banks. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the corridors as Council security forces tried to stop them. Lisa, how much longer? Jack shouted over the noise of battle. Almost there, she replied, working frantically at a computer terminal. The central core is just through this door. The door was massive and heavily secured. It required both electronic access codes and biological identification. Lisa worked on the electronic locks while the Deltari specialist tried to bypass the biological scanners. Got it, Lisa said as the door began to open. The central database core was a cathedral-sized chamber filled with glowing data crystals. This was where the Council kept their most important secrets, the information that controlled the galaxy. Lisa ran to the main access terminal and began uploading the broadcast equipment. Jack, we have a problem, Kate's voice crackled over the radio. Council reinforcements are arriving. A full battle fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. Jack looked at the progress display on Lisa's screen. The upload was only halfway complete. They needed more time. All units, this is Morrison, Jack announced. On the fleet channel, we need 15 more minutes. Hold them off. The response came back immediately. Ryan's fighters formed a protective screen around the planet. The larger rebel ships moved to intercept the Council reinforcements. It was a battle they could not win, but they would buy Jack the time he needed. Upload complete, Lisa announced. Broadcasting now. The transmission went out on every communication channel in the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings suddenly had access to the Council's darkest secrets. The documents that Kate had obtained from Vex, the evidence of Project Stillwater, the records of centuries of genocide and manipulation, but the most damaging evidence was what Lisa found in the central database. The Council had been planning to eliminate 47 more species over the next century. They had detailed plans for manufactured wars, biological weapons, and systematic extermination programs. The galaxy is seeing everything, Lisa said, monitoring the broadcast. News networks, government channels, even personal communication devices. Everyone knows the truth now. Jack felt a moment of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. The building shook as Council forces breached the outer defenses. They were running out of time. Extraction impossible, Kate reported from orbit. The building is surrounded. Council ground forces are moving in, Jack looked at his team. They had known this was a one-way mission, but they had succeeded. The galaxy now knew what the Council really was. Sir, look at this. One of the Marines called out. On the communication screens throughout the database core, They could see the galaxy's reaction to the broadcast. On council worlds, populations were rioting in the streets. Government officials were abandoning their posts. Military units were refusing orders. "The council fleet is breaking apart," Kate reported, her voice filled with amazement. "Ships are defecting or retreating. Some are even firing on each other." Jack watched in wonder as the council's power structure collapsed in real time. Species that had been enemies for generations were suddenly united against their common oppressor. The Zephyrian fleet, backbone of council military power, was splitting apart as individual commanders chose sides. "This is Admiral Keth of the Zephyrian Third Fleet," a voice announced over the communication channels. "We are standing down. We will not fight for criminals and murderers." Similar announcements came from across the galaxy. The Council's authority was crumbling as their own forces turned against them. "Jack, we need to move," Lisa said urgently. "Council security forces are at the door." But Jack was not listening. He was watching the screens as the galaxy transformed before his eyes. The 3-century reign of the Council was ending. The truth had set them all free. "Let them come," Jack said quietly. "We've already won." The door to the database core exploded. Inward, Council security forces poured into the chamber, weapons raised. But they stopped when they saw what was happening on the screens around them. Their own government was collapsing. Their own people were turning against them. "Stand down," Jack told them. "It's over. The galaxy knows the truth now." One by one, the Council security forces lowered their weapons. The war was ending not with a final battle, but with the simple power of truth. The Council had made an example of Earth, but Jack Morrison had made an example of them. 3 months after the fall of Nexus Prime, Jack Morrison sat in what used to be the Galactic Council's main assembly hall. The massive chamber had once housed representatives from thousands of worlds, all bowing to the Council's authority. Now it was filled with delegates from the new Galactic Alliance, arguing loudly about trade agreements and territorial disputes. Jack found the noise strangely comforting. Free people were supposed to argue. It meant they were not afraid to speak their minds. "The Thraxian delegation is complaining about mining rights again," Kate Sullivan said as she approached his seat. She carried a data tablet full of diplomatic reports and treaty proposals. "The Corvan Guild wants exclusive access to the Deltani asteroid fields." "Let them argue," Jack replied. "It's better than the old system where the Council decided everything." Kate sat down beside him. The past few months had been exhausting for all of them. After the Council's collapse, someone had to help organize the new government. Jack had not wanted the job, but the galaxy species had insisted. They trusted him more than they trusted each other. "Any word from Ryan?" Jack asked. "He's still hunting down the last Council loyalists," Kate said. "The Ghost Wing found another weapons cache on Vex Prime. They're making sure those biological weapons can never be used." Ryan Torres had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. His fighter squadron was no longer just human pilots. Alien volunteers from dozens of species had joined the Ghost Wing. They were the Alliance's special forces, striking fast and hard against anyone who threatened the new peace. Lisa Park approached them, carrying her own pile of reports. She had been appointed as the Alliance's chief science advisor, studying all the technology and information they had captured from the Council. Much of it was horrifying, but some of it could be used to help rebuild the galaxy. "I have the final count on the Council's crimes," Lisa said, her voice serious. 43 species completely eliminated over the past 3 centuries. 217 manufactured conflicts. Over 6 billion beings killed in unnecessary wars. Jack closed his eyes. The numbers were staggering. The Council had been responsible for more death and suffering than any force in galactic history, and they had done it all while pretending to be peacekeepers. "What about the survivors?" Jack asked. "We found scattered populations of 12 species that the Council claimed to have eliminated," Lisa replied. "Small groups hiding in distant systems, afraid to reveal themselves. They're coming forward now that the Council is gone." Jack nodded. That was some good news, at least. The Council's evil had not been completely successful. The assembly hall's main screen activated, showing Admiral Keth of the former Zephyrian fleet. The bird-like alien had become one of the Alliance's most trusted military leaders. His decision to turn against the Council had inspired thousands of other officers to do the same. "Jack, we have a situation," Admiral Keth announced. "High Judge Korath has been captured on Omega Station. The local militia wants to execute him immediately." Jack sighed. Korath was the alien who had announced Earth's punishment all those months ago. He was also responsible for ordering the destruction of the human colonies. "Many people wanted him dead. Tell them to wait," Jack said. "We'll handle this properly." Kate looked at him with concern. "Jack, you know what he did? He killed millions of humans. Ryan's wife died because of his orders." "I know," Jack replied. "But if we start executing prisoners without trials, how are we different from the Council? We have to be better than they were." The debate about Korath's fate went on for hours. Some delegates wanted immediate execution. Others argued for life imprisonment. A few even suggested exile to a distant world. Jack listened to all the arguments, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the cost of their victory. Thousands of good people had died in the war against the Council. His own daughter had been on Haven Station when it was destroyed. The pain of that loss would never go away, but they had won. The galaxy was free. New trade routes were opening between former enemy species. Scientific cooperation was replacing military buildup. Children on 100 worlds were growing up without fear of their governments. "I call for a vote," Jack announced when the debate finally died down. The vote was close, but mercy won. Korath would face trial for his crimes, but he would not be executed without due process. It was a small victory for justice over revenge. After the session ended, Jack walked alone through the corridors of the former Council building. The walls were covered with artwork from dozens of worlds, gifts from grateful species. There were paintings of human ships, sculptures honoring the Ghost Wing, and holographic displays showing the liberation of various worlds. Jack stopped at a memorial wall dedicated to the species the Council had eliminated. The Ultrani Explorers, the Vec Colonists, the Crimson World Defenders. Each name represented billions of lives cut short by the Council's cruelty. Director Vex approached quietly. The Zephyrian had been pardoned for his crimes and now worked as a liaison between the former Council species and the Alliance. His decision to help the Resistance had made him a hero, but Jack knew he still carried guilt for his past actions. "Regrets?" Vex asked, looking at the memorial wall. "Many," Jack admitted. "I think about all the people who died. I wonder if there was a better way to do this." "There was not," Vex said firmly. "The Council would never have stopped on their own. They would have kept killing until every free spirit in the galaxy was crushed." Jack knew Vex was right, but it did not make the losses easier to bear. "What happens now? We've torn down the old system, but building something new is harder than destroying what came before." "We learn," Vex replied. "We make mistakes, we fix them, we try again. It is what free beings do." Jack's communication device chimed. A message was coming in from Earth. The planet was slowly recovering from the Council's blockade. Cities were being rebuilt, farms were producing food again, and new ships were being constructed in orbital shipyards. The message was from his son-in-law, Marcus, who had survived the destruction of Haven Station. "Dad, thought you should know. Emma took her first steps today. She's walking around the house like she owns the place." Jack smiled. Emma was his granddaughter, born after the war began. She would grow up in a free galaxy, never knowing the fear that had dominated her parents' generation. "Good news?" Vex asked. "The best kind," Jack replied. "My granddaughter is learning to walk." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching delegates from different species work together in the assembly hall below. It was not perfect. There were still arguments, still mistrust between old enemies, but it was progress. "I have been thinking about retiring," Jack said eventually. "The Alliance doesn't need an old soldier anymore. It needs diplomats and builders." Vex looked surprised. "Where would you go?" "Back to Earth. I want to help rebuild. I want to spend time with my family. I want to watch my granddaughter grow up. The galaxy will miss you." Jack shook his head. The galaxy doesn't need heroes anymore. It needs ordinary people doing ordinary things. Building schools, growing food, raising children. That's how we make sure this freedom lasts. As if summoned by his thoughts, Ryan Torres appeared in the corridor. The fighter pilot looked tired but satisfied. His latest mission had been successful. A last council weapons facility has been destroyed, Ryan reported. No more biological weapons, no more planet killers. The galaxy is finally safe from that particular nightmare. Jack clapped Ryan on the shoulder. Good work. What's next for the Ghost Wing? Peacekeeping missions, mostly. Helping new governments get established. Making sure no one tries to restart the old ways. Ryan paused. Actually, I was thinking about settling down somewhere. Maybe finding a nice planet where I can teach young pilots how to fly. Jack smiled. Sounds like a good plan. The three of them stood together, looking out at the busy assembly hall. Former enemies worked side by side. Former slaves spoke as equals with their former masters. The galaxy was healing. The council had made an example of Earth, expecting humanity to serve as a warning to other species. Instead, Jack Morrison had made an example of them, showing the galaxy that tyranny could be defeated by ordinary people who refused to surrender their freedom. The war was over. The real work of building a better future was just beginning.